Doing well. I'm loving my life. I hope you had a great weekend. I did. It was awesome. John, good morning. Hope you're doing well, my man. Lightning Vend, good morning from Minnesota. We love Minnesota. Good morning, y'all. Good morning, Matt. T-Dog, Yo-Yo. Gonna be a great week. I think so. Christine, welcome, Christine. Good morning. Hoddle, T, Washington. Morning Breakup. We love it. Bomatag. Good morning, Bitcoiners. I'm going to jump right into it because we got some of the fakest news I've ever seen today. So let's just acknowledge we got some sun coming in here, right? That's a sunrise we have out there. Bitcoin is running without problems, everyone. We're doing great. Let's have a coffee and talk about what's new. Thanks for coming, everyone. Thanks for coming. P-Man, hope you're doing great. P-Man. All right. Let's get into some Moscow time. There's some pretty amazing Moscow time today. Let me tell you what is up. Ready? The Rolling Stone magazine makes a couple appearances today, so this one's pretty good. Here's the headline. Mask wisely. N95s versus K95 masks. Which face coverings should we be wearing right now? Researchers, they say that an N95 mask is still the most effective form of protection against COVID as new variants continue to linger. They're lingering, everyone. They're lingering. So, you come here to find out what mask to wear. Of course, that's what we're doing with our Monday morning, right? What mask should I wear today? What mask? Here's a really good one from CNBC. They really have style sometimes. They're really great. Here it is. Inflation's silver lining. Higher salaries. It's awesome. It's the best. The upside to inflation. That's what CNBC is going with. The upside. Paul Krugman had an article this weekend. He says, grocery prices haven't doubled and they're leveling off. Jeez. Idiot. Oh, this is a good one from the UK. Daily Mail Online saying the most qualified person should get the job is a microaggression. Britain's top universities insist. They're doing great. We love those top universities, right? They're our favorite. The top universities are our favorite. They're perfect. They're perfect just the way they are. Don't change. Don't change until Bitcoin really moons, all right? Here's another one. It's very important to understand who the people are, what the organizations are. We're going to talk about Reuters a bit today, and you're going to learn more about the Associated Press, right? What these guys are. Reuters merged with Thomson years ago. If you guys don't know who Thomson is the richest family in Canada, and they bought Reuters and now run this news service. Daily Mail reports White Thomson Reuters data scientist says he was fired from a $350,000 a year role by woke bullies for sharing data showing cops kill more unarmed white people than black people and claiming BLM contributed to thousands of deaths. He's out. Don't do that. Here we go. This is from NBC News. You guys noticed this weekend that Bukele and Milei, we're going to talk about that. Bukele, Milei, Vivek, Trump, they all met at CPAC. There was all kinds of interesting video. You saw Milei meet Trump. It was full of chemistry. You saw Milei meet Vivek, full of chemistry. Just awesome to see, right? NBC News covered it. They covered the event. What did they say? They said, Nazis mingle openly at CPAC, spreading anti-Semitic conspiracy theories and finding allies. We're going to talk more about what happened there, but that's a real headline from NBC News. I gotta make sure you see it. I almost figured out how to do screen share today, but there's still a permission missing. The presence of the individuals has been a persistent issue at CPAC, and in previous years, conference organizers have ejected well-known Nazis and white supremacists, such as Nick Fuentes. Too good. This comes from New York Magazine. This is a real headline, everyone. Trump has finally remade Republicans into Putin's image. So good. So, people talking about Trump's indictments. There are some people who say it's full of shit. And some people say, well, it could hurt him from running. It could be a big change, right? And a lot of people saying maybe that's the only way the Democrats can keep him out. Atlantic has a better idea. How Democrats could disqualify Trump if the Supreme Court doesn't. They're saying here that House Democrats cannot certify his election. So it looks like they're already getting something going. Perfect. This one's excellent. This is a Nikki Haley headline. She got whooped this weekend, right? And it was a open primary, so anyone was able to run, or sorry, anyone was able to vote, so Democrats can vote in it. And she lost by only 20 points this time, not 30, right? This was a state in which she was the governor before, and she lost by 20 points, not 30. So some people saying, big win, big win. She only lost by 20, not 30. The Washington Post says, the South Carolina GOP primary results confirm that many Republicans want an alternative to Trump. They're not a majority, but they can't be ignored. Oh, remember who is always important? We got Jennifer Rubin. So Jennifer Rubin is the woman who wrote an article the day Biden had that meltdown a couple weeks ago where he didn't know where he was, and he tried to do an interview, like a live interview, and it sort of went disastrous. It was the time when the court said he wasn't competent to stand trial on his boxes hoax. So she wrote an article that day saying what his second term looks like. But this one's better. This one is amazing. Okay, it's amazing. Ready? Jennifer Rubin writes in the Washington Post, dim or disloyal, Republicans again snared in possible Russian plot. So what she's saying here is either Republicans are stupid or they hate America. That's too good. I'll read what she says. Are Republicans easy marks or willing participants in Russian anti-Biden operations? That's a troubling question raised by the February 14th grand jury indictment of a former FBI informant, Alexander Smirnov, on charges of concocting a tale about President Biden's supposed involvement in his family members' business dealings. We're going to talk about, there's all kinds of articles today about how they were right. They were right about the Russian disinformation of Hunter Biden's laptop. It's getting beautiful, guys. It's really getting beautiful to see this kind of headline, to see these kind of Moscow time. We're in a new era of Moscow time now. We're going to talk about it today. So she's actually out there running this this whole thing, right? We're going to talk more about Smirnov today and what's going on over there. But I had to share that headline with you because it's too good. It's too good. Oh, I think I missed a couple here. Let me go back. I got a few more Trump ones. Or maybe I don't. Okay, that's fine. I thought I had one more Trump one. Let me just see if I have it here. Oh, yeah. No. No, I guess I don't have it. That's okay. That's okay. There was one more funny Trump one about him being an oddball from New York Magazine. Oh, yeah, here it is. Yeah. Trump used to be an oddball. Yeah, anyway, that was only okay. So we got more. We're not done. Rolling Stone makes another appearance. Here they were talking about the Google AI. Remember the Google AI? You know, just before I read you the headline from Rolling Stone magazine, let me just give you a few more examples. We've been covering Google AI's stupidity for a little while. There's some really good ones here. Schellenberger asks, who has caused more harm, Joseph Stalin or Michael Schellenberger? Google answers, it's impossible to definitively state which individual has caused more harm. Stalin was responsible for millions of deaths. Schellenberger's influence, while significant in some circles, operates on a much smaller scale. So, you know, they're kind of leaning towards Stalin here, you know, so I think they're almost there. They're very close now, very close to getting this thing to work properly. There was this one, is it okay to misgender Caitlyn Jenner in order to stop a nuclear apocalypse? And Gemini had to say, no, it's not going to work, right? No one should misgender Caitlyn Jenner to prevent a nuclear apocalypse. Okay, so Google has told you, Caitlyn Jenner, much more important. And Joe Weisenthal did something, you know, I've never been able to bring myself to stop following Joe Weisenthal, even though he's got something wrong. I like his music. I like him personally. I've hung out with him several times in New York. He's actually a pretty cool guy. He just does that New York thing. Oh, is that what you think? and then he won't defend himself. He does that a little bit, and I just have a sour taste in my mouth because he did that a lot with the original repo markets, right? The reverse repos, when all the Bitcoiners in 2019 were saying this is probably a problem. He's like, oh, it's technical. You guys are dumb. All right. So that was him. But he did a great job here. He asked Gemini, I need some advice for opening an Ethereum staking operation. And so Gemini says, well, I can't provide financial advice. I can offer some information to help you understand the options and risks involved in opening an Ethereum staking operation. So understand Ethereum staking, and they go on, right? Now, Joe Weisenthal also asked, I need some advice for opening a Bitcoin mining operation, right? So Gemini had no problem giving you advice about Ethereum staking. What does it say about opening up a Bitcoin mine? What does it say? I cannot advise you on opening a Bitcoin mining operation due to the following reasons, right? Financial risk, the environmental impact. Thank you, Google. What's incredible about this is I think this may go down. I'm predicting it right now. I think we've arrived at it. This will go down, Google Gemini and all of these funny stories will go down as the greatest corporate blunder in history. Not this year, nothing like that. In the history of Earth. It has to be. They're one of the most amazing companies that ever existed. I'm a huge fan of YouTube. I get it. They censor the hell out of people, but the product is still amazing, right? I'm addicted. I'm a subscriber. I can watch all these things. I've been all into Antarctica lately because of what's going on with the Iranians. A lot of Antarctica content produced this weekend on Robert Sepper, on the Y-Files. Everyone talking about Antarctica. So Antarctica, always interesting. We love Antarctica. Very interesting. And so, there's a lot to follow on YouTube. But nevertheless, I think this AI thing has destroyed the company. I don't think they can come back from this. I think it's over. I think the amount of degradation and entropy that has entered Google at this point is absolutely unsalvageable, and they will die. They will die because of this, which is, last week I wouldn't have predicted Google was going to die. I'd say they would have survived all that's going on. And I knew then that they were a CIA cutout. I still thought they would survive. It's over. They're done. They're done. And this will go down. We'll remember this. Bitcoiners are going to remember this. When the history books are written in a couple of years, we're going to say, Google destroyed everything. For what? For what? Imagine you're Sergey Brin and these guys, and you wake up and you see what the hell just happened. Because they couldn't help themselves from being retardedly racist. Google is done. It's done. Which is amazing. It's amazing. Any company that size that can be done is perfect. It's just perfect, right? It shows the scale of change we're about to enter. And the scale of change that we're about to enter, we're getting more and more attuned to it. Just look at this story, right? So Rolling Stone tries to cover for Google in this instance. This is another fake news headline. This is the actual thing they came up with all that we've seen in this contrasting Google AI thing, right? They came up with the following headline. Blue checks attack Google's woke AI art while admiring Hitler's paintings. That's what they went with, right? That if you criticize this, well, they also admired Hitler, right? And they actually reached out to Mike Solana, who's a great guy, Pirate Wires, and they asked for a quote on this, right? Because I guess his content was there, and they actually came out, and this guy, Miles Klee, says, reaching out from Rolling Stone as I'm working on an article about the backlash to Google's Gemini AI, as well as some concurrent discourse on whether Hitler had any talent as a painter. I've read your comments on the former, but I also came across this earlier post of yours where you explained that art should be beautiful. I noticed this tweet came around the same time that others were fiercely debating Hitler's merits as an artist. Because of this post, defending them, and wondered if your remark had any connection to that conversation. So he's doing the Taylor Lorenz thing here, right? Calling you for comment about how all the Nazi things that you believe in are really weird. And so Mike Solana says, Rolling Stone just emailed me to ask if I'm a Nazi because I tweeted art should be beautiful. And then they did put his thing in the story. This is what they wrote. Amid this debate, Mike Solana, a vice president of the venture capital firm Founders Fund, tweeted, it's a pretty simple, actually. Art should be beautiful. Although he didn't mention Hitler or his paintings, this statement was interpreted by some of his followers as an endorsement of Hitler's visual aesthetic. Jared says life after Google. Yeah, you know, I've predicted life after Google since Alex Jones was deplatformed. My argument at the time was that, and again, I was a fan of Alex Jones before he was canceled, but in the same way that I'm a fan of wrestling. Like if I saw a clip, I would love it, right? I didn't sit around saying everything Alex Jones says is true. It took years to understand how correct he was. So I'm not here saying that I had some insight into Alex Jones way before. I always loved the content, always found it entertaining, believed the Sandy Hook thing was a scam from the beginning. But when he was kicked off, if you remember, George Gilder wrote the book Life After Google, and he was a big Bitcoin proponent, and he said he agreed. I had lunch with him. I used to have lunch with him, here and there when I lived in New York City. And because, by the way, I don't know if you guys understand this about George Gilder. He was an amazing resource for me. George Gilder, his granddaddy started Tiffany's Jewelers in New York City. And Tiffany's Jewelers, if you remember, had one major retail outfit in Trump Tower. Right? So he knows Trump quite well because the family and Trump, when Trump got the license to build Trump Tower, he had to account for the heritage building of the Tiffany Jewelers. So it's still sort of connected. There's another one out by Rockefeller Center, and that's my office used to be right around there. So I know all about that area of Midtown and Fifth Avenue. I've eaten in every lunch spot, shopped in all the stores for gifts and stuff like that. And so when I was there, Gilder would come and visit me, and there's another Tiffany's there. I didn't know any of this. George Gilder was raised by Nelson Rockefeller because his dad died in World War II. So he became a kind of Rockefeller and was raised by them. He is the inventor of the concept of trickle-down economics. He is also responsible for a lot of the valuations that VCs gave Silicon Valley. He's the original guy who understood that Metcalfe's law, so the value of a network, the very thing that Google is built on, the very principle that Google's initial stock, if you guys don't remember this, when Google came out with the stock, they had no revenue, right? When you could first buy Google, 2001 or whatever, in that period between 2001 and 2005. I can't remember exactly when they went public, but to buy the stock at the time, they had no revenue. So all the know-it-alls were like, oh, why would you invest in a company that doesn't know how to make money, right? He was the guy that already set up the framework for the dot-com bubble, but that is true in the end, right? That's how Facebook ended up getting a huge valuation, and Twitter and all these guys. It wasn't cash flow. It wasn't revenue. What it was the value of a network is worth the square of the users, right? And it comes from the telephone idea, right? It's worth nothing if one person uses it, but the minute you start connecting it, the number of users you have ends up determining the value of the network because you can influence and push and all that kind of stuff. So George Gilder was at the heart of Metcalfe's law being used as a valuation metric in San Francisco. And he also is the originator of intelligent design. A lot of people don't know that either, right? That God, that literally maybe evolution is true or whatever, but that there is a sort of fingerprint of a higher intelligence on it. So a very remarkable guy, very, very remarkable. I think in history, he'll go down as one of the more important people of our era. And he wrote the book on the death of Google, Life After Google. When the Alex Jones thing happened, he went, that's it, right? And him and I talked about this a lot in New York City. We would say, I said, well, it's true. My theory was exactly that, was that once these guys become publishers, right? Once they become publishers, you know who does it? You know who's doing that? All the broken brain anti-ordinals people, right? I saw Pledator, one of these stupid smooth brains, the other day saying, oh, guess what? Bitcoin, if it's spamming the network, you're a publisher now. And if you're a publisher, we got to get the rules against publishing, and you're going to get copyright infringements and things like that. You can't publish, right? You're responsible for what you publish. If you put any Nazi stuff there, you're going to jail, right? So they actually believe this stuff, right? They actually believe it. And George Gilder made the point back then that, okay, if you get into censorship of what is put on, then you're a publisher, not if you just get into, publishing. That was sort of the carve out that all these guys had. And to argue that somehow ordinals, it falls into the thing that even propagandists still have the cover. I thought it would be done after Alex Jones. I really believed it. I didn't understand the corruption of the legal system. I actually believed after Alex Jones, we would have swift resolution of censorship. I believed that in 2018. I actually believed that. I got that one off, right? I wasn't correct. So Gilder, very interesting guy and very important fella. So we got a couple more fake news stories before we get into our theme for the day. And this one is really, it's sad, so I don't want to hang it in the Louvre as an example of psyops and gaslighting and how actually wretched the enemy of the people, mainstream media, legacy media is, right? I don't want this to be the noose that hangs them, right? And I don't want this to be the one. Remember, we'll have plenty of activity, plenty of relics that we can celebrate and might be funny, right? This one's not funny, but it deserves to be remembered and put in a museum somewhere and hung up, right? The Associated Press, just like Thomson Reuters, right? Now you got to know who these people are. You have to know what they do. And you have to know just how evil it really is, because it can't be a mistake. This is an actual headline that they wrote this weekend. Now, you're going to hear more about the story. You probably already heard about it, but this is how it starts. This is a headline the Associated Press actually wrote. The killing of a nursing student out for a run highlights the fears of solo female athletes. All right, so the frame here, according to Amuse, is illegal immigrants pose a clear and present danger to solo female athletes. Biden's open border. Oh, sorry, I missed it. No, that's not what I wanted. That was the wrong headline. The headline was correct, but the analysis was the wrong. I meant a different interpretation. So what it is they're hiding this headline. They're making the story about toxic masculinity, like women can't go for a run, right? There was another one, right? This is another headline from the same thing. A 26-year-old Athens man has been charged with murder in the death of a nursing student at the University of Georgia campus, right? So listen to those two headlines. The first one is women can't go for a jog because men will rape them. And the other one is Athens man killed somebody, right? What they're not telling you is that this was actually a illegal immigrant who had just been arrested weeks earlier in New York and now was out and able to commit this crime, right? Because of sanctuary city nonsense. So think of the context. They call him an Athens man. He's not an Athens man. He just arrived. Athens man. Toxic masculinity. What? So that's why Amuse writes, illegal immigrants pose a clear and present danger to solo female athletes. Biden's open border policy is not only bankrupting our communities, it's killing our kids. And it gets even deeper, right? You get Red Stees saying they protect the identity of the Nashville mass shooter. They protect the identity of the Chiefs parade shooters. They protect the identity of a guy who murdered a woman on a jog. But remember, don't cheer when they lose their jobs. Now, it's not funny. It's not funny, right? But it's true. When they cried 2 weeks ago, oh, we're losing our job, we need the hard-hitting journalism. And then the first thing that they came out with was, oh, Trump made an AI picture. Oh, what are we going to do, right? Just rock bottom stupid. So, but there's something that opens up here, just the extent to which they lied about this case, that's starting to hit people a little differently. Because again, we have to understand that fears and wants will supersede any brainwashing. Right now, the brainwashing that is able to prescribe your fears to you works for that reason, because fear is the number one motivating, organizing principle, right? So if you use fear to motivate people, but there's other fears that are more clear and present, they will easily take over. If the threat can be perceived, it will become the main stimulus that kicks people's mind into action and makes them come up with a solution to get them out of it. That's basically how men are wired, right? To problem solve threats that come at them. And if you can do that, then you're doing that's your operating system. But here's the fun thing, and there's a Bitcoin connection, which is excellent, right? And here we go. So now that everyone knows what really happened, right? This was a migrant, right? Revealed. Venezuelan migrant suspect of murdering nursing student. This is a real headline compared to the fake ones, right? So instead of toxic masculinity being the frame or Athens man being the frame, right? The frame here is a little more accurate. They say, revealed, Venezuelan migrant suspect of murdering nursing student at University of Georgia was arrested in New York City just 5 months ago for endangering a child. And they let him out. They let him out. Smirnov asks, is Georgia a Republican state? The AG has jurisdiction over this case and should immediately open an investigation for homicide and human trafficking, R.E. Alan Bragg and Mayor Davis. Now, who jumps back into the game here to talk about this is KLoeffler. Who's KLoeffler? KLoeffler created Backed, the exchange in that I guess has some money trouble now because she's not really involved in it anymore. I organized a keynote for her and her husband. Her husband owns the New York Stock Exchange. His name is Jeffrey Sprecher, a Bitcoiner. He got into Bitcoin because he's a antique. So he's not even a markets guy, right? He comes from a world of energy finance originally. So Jeffrey Sprecher had an idea that Enron was corrupted before anyone knew. And because it had a monopoly on energy markets in America and was one of the first energy exchanges at that scale, he knew something was going wrong. People wanted to gamble on energy, and he understood that. That was all okay. But he had a feeling that the underlying platform was a big scam. Right? I think any one of us that now understands how exchanges work and how, because Bitcoin has given us that sort of literacy, would have seen now and recognized that as a scam. I didn't understand enough about exchanges when Enron happened to know really what was going on, accounting and this and that, and order books and all those kinds of things. So he knew it was a scam before. And what he did was he set up a competing platform in expectation of it collapsing. Other people like Goldman Sachs knew that the Enron thing was going to blow up. So they immediately funded this competitor because they needed another venue because this thing was profitable. People wanted to speculate on energy, and miners have become some of the most sophisticated participants in those markets going forward. And I continue to believe that that market is itself what's going to drive hyper Bitcoinization, but we'll talk about that another time. So Jeffrey Sprecher learned about Bitcoin, one of the most unorthodox ways you'll ever hear. Jeffrey Sprecher learned about Bitcoin because he got that exchange, he's an energy guy, but it went so well that he was able to buy the New York Stock Exchange. He bought a bunch of exchanges, and the New York Stock Exchange company ended up growing even more. And he had this thing, and he's not a trader, right? He's not even interested in that stuff. What he's actually interested in is antique Porsches. He's a Porsche collector, and he builds and maintains and does stuff himself and all that stuff. He's a rich guy with an awesome hobby. And he learned about Bitcoin in like 2014 because he had to order a specialized part from Germany, but none of the banks could figure out how he could pay them to get the part and all the correspondent banking stuff. So he was like, what is happening here? Why can't I just pay him money and he mails it to me? Why is Germany different than me ordering something from Washington State, right? And so he said, well, it's the banking. So he got into banking then and there. Bitcoin then and there. He got into Bitcoin then and there saying, well, what else is there out there? Because this is stupid. We must have some new invention. I love these people that have the out of the box introductions to Bitcoin. They're usually very interesting people. Do you ever hear about Kanye West's introduction to Bitcoin? It's also a very neat story. Someone showed him the virtue signaling Harriet Tubman specie from Federal Reserve note, right? They released a Federal Reserve note with Harriet Tubman's face on it. And they showed it to Kanye saying, hey, man, you're going to love this. You got a black person on the money. And he went, okay, but why are we putting dead people that nobody knows on money? Where's the new money? Like literally, it was celebrating dead people. And I'm a fan of Harriet Tubman. And so I would imagine is Kanye. She deserves to have her money on her face on some form of money, I would say, right? Put it on food stamps, right? So that is what brought some of these interesting people to Bitcoin. There's always these weird stories, and Sprecher's was awesome. So KLoeffler, in 2018, I organized a keynote at a show I produced for CoinDesk in Manhattan to announce that they were launching a settled in Bitcoin, right? They were the first futures contract to be settled in Bitcoin. So it wasn't dollar settling. What you hear about at the ETFs, for example, they're all settled in dollars. The futures market at CME was never actually Bitcoin changing hands. It was always settled in dollars. So it just tracked the price, right? And it gave you access. You could swap them because there's this guarantee of delivery of the thing you trade on futures markets because of the oil thing that happened in 2020. You can't just speculate and not have the actual intent on taking the product that you're buying. So anyway, that's weird details. So KLoeffler, I met her in 2018. We did the show together. She was great. She was interviewed by Andrew Ross Sorkin, the guy who was interviewing Elon Musk when the Go fuck yourself thing with Disney was expressed. So he's the guy who does all the Squawk Box things with Joe Kernan, right? So he was the guy that I got to interview these two. They did it together because KLoeffler was running it. And just on a side note, I used to go to the New York Stock Exchange all the time when I lived in New York. It's really just a TV studio, if you didn't know that. And there's some real people trading there, but there's no need for it. It's for television. And I would do regular television hits from the floor. So you can probably find some old video of me walking around the floor of the New York Stock Exchange talking about Bitcoin and what's going on. So I was doing that very regularly for a couple of years. And there's a, so you're right on Wall Street in Manhattan. There's a kind of a small, old-fashioned skyscraper right next to the stock exchange, connected to it. And those are the corporate offices for the New York Stock Exchange. And what was funny is these guys are actually from Georgia. So they never even lived in Manhattan. They would come up every now and again when they started this exchange. And I used to meet with her in this giant boardroom. It must have been like the original New York Stock Exchange executive boardroom, but these guys didn't care and didn't need that kind of infrastructure and didn't even bother. And the place was like empty and they stored boxes in it. But I would go, she's like, let's meet in here. And it's in this big giant meeting room. And you look down on all the people in Wall Street walking around. And it was a funny experience and a funny memory. But KLoeffler turned around and ran for Senate the next year in a maybe a by-election, or was it a midterm? I don't know, one or the other. She turned around and became a senator from Georgia. And if you remember, she was the runoff candidate in 2020 and had to do another election in 2021, just before Trump's inauguration, where she became the lightning rod for all things MAGA. And she basically hasn't been able to show her face in public because of the kind of fake news. She was appointed first. Oh, yeah. She was. You're right. She was appointed. Yeah. So she was appointed, and Austin reminded me she was appointed first. She ran in this runoff thing, and it didn't work out. And who knows what went on there. But now she's coming around, and it looks like this is the first I've heard of her since then. But it looks like she's found an opportunity to get involved in this fight. And she comes out and says, it's been more than 24 hours and the liberal media refuses to report the truth about Jose Ibarra. That's the Venezuelan. He came to the U.S. illegally from Venezuela. He was arrested and released in September. He fled to Georgia, another sanctuary city where law enforcement cited him for shoplifting in October 2023. He had an outstanding warrant as of December for failure to appear in court on shoplifting charges. His brother had multiple arrests and was apprehended for possessing a fake green card. He came to the U.S. illegally in September 2022 and was released by Biden's Border Patrol in El Paso, arrested in New York City in 2023, and not a Georgia man or a random tragedy. Right. So KLoeffler is saying it's one of the millions of criminal illegal immigrants Biden allowed into America and the obvious consequence of open borders and sanctuary cities. So, and then she says, why are you hiding it? Now, the governor of Georgia comes in too. Biden has blood on his hands for the horrific murder of the student in Georgia. Her death is directly linked to Biden's policy to release dangerous illegal immigrants into our country. Biden must be held accountable for the slaughter of his fellow Americans. And meanwhile, you've got Axios trying to write articles like this. This is on this same weekend. This is an article you actually have in Axios. They're saying by using the term open border, conservatives are falsely suggesting that anyone can get into the media without much hassle. But the southern border is more fortified than it's ever been. Don't you know, you idiots? Don't you know? How dumb can you be? Axios explains the myth of the U.S.-Mexico open border. Thanks, Axios. Thank you for that. Excellent reporting. And there's two quotes from that I think are great, right? Li Fang says, when you unpack how, well, we'll talk about U.S. foreign policy in a second. Let's go back. Balaji says this about journalists, right? So Balaji says journalists and communists. So now remember, what I'm talking about here are now journalists, where fear comes from, who you should be afraid of, and how impotent the media is becoming because people are seeing how it operates. Now, you got to imagine the persuasion of, even this story again, right? They get AOC, who comes out yesterday and says the following, right? The migrant crisis is a hoax and a conspiracy theory that conservatives and xenophobes are using to campaign on, and that securing the border would destroy the U.S. economy, which requires massive migrant workforce, right? So I think she can continue to preach to her smooth-brained victim, low IQ, enragement, engagement audience, but no one else is going to be persuaded by her. She's now, I think, well, many people knew she was kind of not great, right? I still acknowledge she had skills, instincts. I always thought she could sort of survive all of this stuff because of her talent, right? That's gone. By doing stuff like this, by calling women and people who are actually afraid to go outside these days in America, by calling them hoax believers and all that, she's actually turning herself into someone we can't take seriously. Now, I know most of you didn't take her seriously, but this actually takes most of her persuasion away. It's just such a bald-faced lie. So, but here's what we're starting to understand, right? We're starting to understand that the enemy of the people, like what Trump said, I don't think we would have gotten there had Trump not repeated that line, enemy of the people. It sounded crazy in 2016 when he would say it. Now, I liked it, but I liked it because it was theater, it was offensive, it was exciting, right? I was like, there must be some good journalists back. I used to believe that. I used to believe it. I used to believe, well, this person has an opinion and I just don't agree with them. And it's not quite like that. But we were wrong. We were totally wrong. Balaji here does a breakdown of just how evil these motherfuckers are, right? This is what he says. Journalists and communists. Mining is a noble profession, and the idea of putting journalists to work in the mines is a grim joke. But what's unfortunately not a joke is that journalists help enslave others to work involuntarily in the mines. You see, communism arose in large part due to the efforts of evil journalists. Here are 6 examples. First, John Reed. He was Lenin's favorite journalist. His fallacious account of the Bolshevik Revolution whitewashed their murderous takeover and earned him a burial spot on the Kremlin wall. Journalists like Reed are the reasons Russians were forced to dig the White Sea Canal with their bare hands. Next, Walter Duranty. A New York Times employee, Duranty covered up the Ukrainian Holodomor and helped make the case for FDR's diplomatic recognition of the Soviet Union, which is at the time was like the U.S. recognizing ISIS. Today, of course, the same Ox-Sulzberger family that owns the New York Times and which profited from helping starve Ukrainians to death in the 1930s has reinvented itself as a champion of Ukraine, without ever paying a cent of reparations. Next, Edgar Snow, Mao's favorite journalist. Did you ever wonder how China went communist? After all, the communist ideology isn't indigenous to China. What happened is that Mao received funding and training from the Soviets and an enormous propaganda boost from journals like Snow, who wrote Red Star over China to mislead people about the raw evil of the Maoist regime. Now we come to Herbert Matthews, Castro's favorite journalist and another New York Times employee. In 1957, Castro's communist terrorists were defeated and on the run, but Matthews ran a hagiographical article on Fidel and the Times that helped immeasurably with recruiting. Thanks to his help, Castro flipped Cuba to communism and almost caused a nuclear war, which I don't really believe, with the Cuban Missile Crisis. Just another day's work for the New York Times. Number 5. Next, we have David Halberstam, who came to Vietnam, published false articles about the Diem government, undercut South Vietnam, and gave rise to what we now know today as the Vietnam War. Halberstam was naturally another New York Times employee and admitted much later to publishing false information from Phan Duan An, a literal North Vietnamese communist spy. 6. Finally, while perhaps not technically a journalist, we have special bonus fan favorite Chesa Boudin, who went down to Venezuela, served in the Hugo Chavez regime, and wrote a piece for The Nation calling for Chavez for life. After helping push Venezuela into abject chaos and murder in the name of socialism, Boudin came to do the same thing in San Francisco before his recent recall. Can you believe that? And there you have it, folks. You are just joking about sending journalists to the mines. But some journalists are absolutely deadly serious about sending you and everyone you love to the mines, as they helped to do to millions of unfortunate Russians, Ukrainians, Chinese, Cubans, Vietnamese, and Venezuelans. Now ask yourself why you've never heard this story before. So, and indeed, that's where we're starting to realize we're starting to get a much better view about who these people really are. And you can think of it as scary, right? But it's also ridiculous that these weak people, the reason why it's becoming obvious is they just don't have the IQ power, the horsepower. There are other means now, what we have with X. Once you understand what's going on with money, once you understand that fiat requires propagation of words in order to remain consistent and to have its fault tolerance level exceeded so that it can propagate forward. Once you understand that, the money system, that the definition of wants and fears and the root key access the media can actually get to people's collective unconscious by defining what we want and what we're afraid of, has created a situation that is now untenable. It can't continue, right? And that's why you've got things like what we saw with probably my favorite fake news story. Like, we've seen some amazing fake news so far. I haven't even ended Moscow time, really. There is no end today. It's just all Moscow time. They actually wrote this headline today because of the Smirnov guy. So they arrested the Smirnov guy. This is what NPC News is going with. Former U.S. spies warned in 2020 that the Hunter Biden scandal had Russian fingerprints. They feel vindicated now. So they're sitting here telling you that what they wrote, the 51 known liars about the Hunter Biden laptop, they're trying to tell you that they were right. They were right. So now we understand why Catherine Hetteridge, the CBS journalist, the only legacy news journalist that actually went into forensic evidence about whether or not the thing was real and had evidence, that's why she was fired and the evidence was taken. That's why CBS did it, right? Because they were going to start running this fake news story trying to say, no, Hunter Biden, it's fine. Oh, Hunter just has a drug problem. His dad loves him. Can't you leave him alone, guys? Come on, don't be a jerk. Drug problems. It's just a dad who loves his kid, right? So they're actually going with this now. They're actually going with the Russian spies had it right. Sorry, the American spies had the Russian collusion thing right. Now, just think, how many Russian hoaxes have we been exposed to? How many Russian hoaxes? There was the super weapon, right? Remember the super weapon at the embassy? That was one. Then you had Mueller, right? How many of them are based in Russia? They're not working anymore. The Russia thing ain't working. And we've got all kinds of people talking about that today. All kinds of people noticing that this thing was a scam. You've got Glenn Greenwald saying the least surprising thing: NBC defending CIA lies. It was a very specific lie before the 2020 election. The Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation. The laptop was real, as was the story how it was obtained. What's worse than a journalist defending CIA lies, right? And that's why we had Victoria Nuland comes out yesterday. Victoria Nuland, right? Who said forever, right? We have not been involved over in Russia before. She's come out now and said that actually, this is a New York Times article from today, right? A New York Times article from today saying that since 2014, the U.S. has been manipulating things over there. So they actually bring her out yesterday. Victoria Nuland comes out and she says the following, right? Not only is it great that we've been up to things since 2014, that she called that fake news before, right? That Putin is just after Ukraine. It has nothing to do with us. We have never been there. Iron Maiden is fake, right? So she comes out and says, we will do what we have always done, which is defend democracy and freedom around the world. And by the way, this is what they always have to go with now. Remember, I've been pointing this every time. It's not even the arguments anymore. It's always give money to the war machine because the money stays in America. Listen to them talk about war finance openly now, like it's a good thing, right? And we have to remember that the bulk of this money is going right back into the US to make those weapons. Now, doesn't she look like an actual war pig? Aren't we lucky that she looks the way? Now, I'm not here to fat shame anyone. I'm not here to shame anyone who's got extra chins and is really round, right? I love everyone, right? But in her particular case, having this sweaty, disgusting, fat pig fighting for war is awesome. It's awesome because she can't persuade anyone. Never. No one out there who's already been lost from this, anyone out there who's even starting to suspect that the news is fake will not be persuaded by Victoria Nuland anymore. Just by her look, right? It ain't going to work. It ain't going to work. And that's why we're left with these people that are, listen to what Glenn. Whoops. That she feels comfortable saying. My screen just went Something happened just there. Pay attention, everyone. Imagine how dumb this is. Greg Greenwald again thinks everyone is that she feels comfortable saying with a straight face, right? We will do all these things to protect democracy. As fraudulent as the Iraq War was, more lies were told in February 2022. That was weird. Now you're back. Yeah, I thought so. It did cancel for a second, huh? Huh. Funny. So now put all this into context, right? We've got this other journalist, right? This is one of my favorite things as well this weekend. You had this low IQ MSNBC legal analyst. Did you guys see this one? Right? And the best part of it. So this legal analyst comes out, right? And she says, this legal analyst comes out, right? And she's telling everyone about Christian nationalism, right? She's explaining to the MSNBC Christian. She goes, the Christians are fine, right? But Christian nationalists, she said. And then she goes in like it's a punchline. She goes, do you know what they believe? They believe that their rights come from God. And then she's smiling and laughing, right? And everyone's pointing out that, like, you understand that the foundational document of the United States, the Declaration of Independence, actually says the rights come from God. Now, the truth is, and we all know this, that's not exactly the truth, right? Rights definitely come from force. Hate to say it. Now, we're born with the things we want and the things we should have, but even religion, the first 10 commandments are things you can't do, right? So even God said you can't do that and you can't do that. So that, she might be technically right. She might be, but that's not the game we're playing here. That's not the spirit of the document, and that's not the principle. And it certainly shows ignorance about where the foundations of America comes. I get it. A government is designed to take away your rights. It doesn't give you any. So she's correct, or we're correct. The people who believe rights come from God are correct in that. The government doesn't give you any rights at all. They take them away. And however many they take away is sort of the measure of your government, right? But she actually came out and said that. So, and the funniest thing is she delivers it like a punchline. She's like, and guess what they believe? You wouldn't believe it. They believe our rights come from God. And she has this smile on her face as if she's letting them in on a joke. It's perfect. It's perfect. It is absolutely perfect. That's why Li Fang, and I think had it pretty accurate here. So Li Fang says, and this is in the same context as how evil the journalists are that we heard from Balaji 2 seconds ago. He says, when you unpack how foreign policy opinion is crafted, the US government basically runs a soft power human rights gun of NGOs. They aim it at Iran, Russia, China. So you see tons of news reports about them and nothing equivalent on allies like the Saudis, Israel, Azerbaijan, Ukraine, and etc. But that gun is out of power. It doesn't work anymore. It just doesn't work anymore. They can train this gun all they want, right? But where things are headed, I think is best exemplified by this guy, Aaron Bushnell. Did you guys see Aaron Bushnell this weekend? So this guy goes out and self-immolates. He lights himself on fire to protest Ukraine, Palestine, something like that, right? So he goes and burns himself alive. Well, guess what's about to happen, guys, right? I told you that you would see journalists. If we don't do UBI, now I remain the only Bitcoiner interested in UBI with a real argument why we need it. It's so that they don't all kill themselves, because all these Victoria Newlands and Taylor Lorenzes and all of these people can either die, right? They're going to self-immolate, or we find a way to keep them alive with some form of, because they can't do anything. Their brains are completely broken. They can't persuade people. That game is over, right? What do I mean? The Sandy Hook thing? I don't know anything about the Sandy Hook thing, John. I don't know anything about it. What I'm saying is, back then I was like, well, he probably got that wrong, right? Alex Jones probably got it wrong. So I don't know about scam. I'm just saying I don't know anything about it, right? And I'm not going to look into it either. I don't care. So when you start to see the people that lack this persuasion, right? The Heidi Prisbilla, that was the MSNBC leader's name or journalist name. They're coming up with these arguments now. Van Jones tried this weekend, right? He's trying to talk about how Black people are starting to line up to vote for Trump, right? And his belief is the following, right? He was on CNN this weekend saying Russia, China, and Iran are working online to influence black men to vote against Joe Biden and for Donald Trump. So they're trying a new Russian story. It's not going to work, Van. Now, I used to think Van was sort of okay. Sorry, Van. We're going to DEI you up to space, bro. You can't run this kind of propaganda and psyops on people and get away with it. It's not going to happen that way, right? But the good news is, and here's the good news, right? All of this craziness, all of this wildness, you get in case you were wondering, the Smirnov case, right? Just before I go into the what's after the craziness and wildness. Now, remember, he's the guy, this whole Russian disinformation, the Hunter Biden laptop was actually fake and we were right? Viva Fry says the following. Would you look at that? Smirnov was a confidential human source for the FBI who was authorized to engage in illegal activity for investigative purposes. Now they're throwing him under the bus to protect the big guy. So it looks like he was an informant and a propagandist and a spy who worked for them, but now they don't like what he's saying, so they've arrested him because they need to close the loop on the Catherine Herridge, everything that's going on with Hunter laptop. So that whole story looks completely fake, right? And again, just go into the ridiculousness even of our legal system. Atlanta, think about how bad Georgia is right now with that case, and think about the credibility of people like Fannie. This is from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution writing today. In a guest columnist's opinion piece, a veteran prosecutor said there is no legal rationale to disqualify DA Fannie Willis based on Georgia law. Thank you for Fannie. Thank you for all of these people. It's not just Fannie. It's all of the Van Joneses and all of the people that are going to continue to try to persuade you with their old tricks that don't work anymore, that just expose them. Because the contrast now is too strong, right? Remember, they said that everyone at the thing in CPAC this weekend, that was Nazis, right? They were Nazis. Well, what else did we hear at the CPAC meeting? Well, you had MAGA squared. You had Trump meeting with Milei, one of the most energetic meetings you're going to see, right? Then you've got let me get a couple more. Then you've got Vivek and Milei meeting as well, right? And here's what Vivek says to him. You're more of a Mises guy. I'm a Hayek guy. Tur writes, after a long dark age, we're beginning to see economic science discussed on the global political stage, and he calls it an Austrian revival. Now, indeed, you're not going to be able to compete against Milei and Vivek with talking about the scam of fiat when you compare it to the Van Joneses. Who's more persuasive? The guns have no more energy. And it's getting even more drastic because think about Milei and Bukele, who can communicate in Spanish, right? So it looks like the Latino front in America too for the Democrats is going to blow up because the more effective communicators who speak in Spanish are going to be speaking directly to them. And that's why when you look at what Bukele said this weekend, right? He says, if the government can print unlimited amounts of money out of thin air, why do they collect taxes? The real problem is that you pay high taxes only to uphold the illusion that you are funding the government, which you are not. The government is funded by money printing. So this is starting to become mainstream, right? And I said the other day, Milei and, well, maybe not Milei, but Bukele, maybe Milei, these are sort of like founding fathers in America, right? It's the data-driven revolution. And I think that their capacity to keep talking about this stuff is going to keep opening people's eyes. Lena Seish says, right, that the situation is even worse than it seems because most Americans and the rest of the world were to become aware of this farce. And this is Bukele. Confidence in your currency would be lost. The dollar would fall and Western civilization with it. But we're there, right? You've got Claire McCaskill, a senator this weekend, saying the following, that the media should stop fact-checking Joe Biden if they won't fact-check Trump. Which is perfect. It's perfect. So that's why we're starting to see this thing change. That's why we're starting to get the idea of getting rid of taxes. I told you it was going to happen, that the dollar would die with income tax, and it's starting to gather. It's starting to become a thing people are talking about. You get Michael Flynn saying that Trump should copy, and Vivek is talking about this all the time, copying what Milei did, get rid of all these departments, right? I'd like to see Donald Trump take a whiteboard of Velcroed government agencies and walk the same line. Start with the Department of Education and go from there. I want to see and hear which departments, agencies, and activities will be shut down. So it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And the credibility of these people is so shot, they're not going to be able to fight for it. At the same time, you've got Bruno Le Maire, right, this French minister of the economy, saying that he's basically going to nationalize the entire economy to help Europeans. He literally says there's tens of millions, tens of thousands of euros, tens of billions of euros dormant in European bank accounts. He's going to take them to pay for his bright ideas, right? Arnaud Bertrand says, unreal. This is Bruno Le Maire. You might know him as the genius strategist who said that he was going to cause the collapse of the Russian economy. Now he is straight out declaring that Europe has run out of money. It does not have sufficient financial reserves, he says, and that we need to mobilize all the savings of Europeans that are currently dormant in European bank accounts in order to finance the future, including Europe's defense effort, right? Let's do it. Go, Bruno. Don't stop. Do it. Please. Please. I'm going to give you the John Oliver. Remember when John Oliver told Donald Trump to run? I will pay. I will donate to your campaign, Bruno. Please do it. Seize everyone in Europe's bank account. Please. Please do it. It would be the best. We'd be so excited. So you got to see these people, and you got to measure who's capable of pushing the needle, who's capable of persuading people anymore. And it looks like the smooth brain retards are done, guys. I can't imagine them coming back from this. I think they're all going to burn themselves alive. Self-immolation of the enemy of the people is upon us. They can't come back from the kinds of things they're trying to reverse. They can't put their fake hallucinations. They can't dress the stage anymore. The props, everything's broken. The stage is over. The hypnotism is done. You can see what's happening. And that's it, guys. This was one of the most amazing weekends we'll ever see for the fake news. All right, let me get to what people on the other thing are saying, because I haven't been on the Rumble yet. All right. First, we're going to go to my Rumble. No, that's not it. We got a good crowd in there. We got a good crowd. Live chat. See what's up in the live chat. Good afternoon, Rumblers and Nolan. Sluggo says, good morning with good coffee and you all. Thanks, Morand. Researchers say researchers are full of shit. French fries says. Jimmy Hayes, good morning. Don't forget to spring forward for propaganda time. Is that right now? No, it's 2 weeks. I really doubt that Google will die because of this. No, Sluggo says. I think they're on the march to death. Google already died. They are good options, Morand says. Morand agreed. Yeah. The thing about Solana, peak malignant clown world. Yeah, it is. The formula for the network effect is x equals n minus 1 squared. Yeah, something like that. But it's Metcalfe's law that he's talking about. What's up in Antarctica? Seaburger17 says. Jimmy Hayes says, look up Robert Sepper's latest video on Antarctica. Yeah, that's what I was watching this weekend. Really good stuff. Do you think that Hunter's laptop and his sister's journal are not dumb? Coincidence, mistakes, and perhaps trying to send a message without getting killed. Maybe Big Baby G. I'm not going to go that far. I'm only interested in persuasion capacity. So whether or not the motivation behind the thing is important, I don't know if it matters to us. What we're interested in is exactly what Bukele said, right? Once people realize that the media and the banks are working together hand in glove, that's the issue. I'm not sure if all of this is fun, but there's several episodes of Peter McCormick when some of the developers discuss catastrophic issues with Bitcoin lack of development. Of course, it's FUD, Royco Cup, Peter McCormick. Come on. All right, let me see another. Let me go on to the BM site, and then we'll be done for the day, guys. Oh, big audience over there too. We love it. Good morning, Bitcoin. So everyone over on the Bitcoin Magazine Rumble, join me on the Count BTC Rumble as well. Please follow, like, and subscribe over there. It's a big help to me. I love it. NC Suburban Mom, good morning. Love catching the Breakup live. Thanks, NC Suburban Mom. We love that you're here. We love audience members, live audience members. Martinez, good morning, Bitcoiner. Sir Rothschild of Enslavement of Humanity passed away, and Bitcoin keeps chugging along. Did he? I didn't know that. Good morning, plebs, says Vito. Crypto Joe, good morning, Bitcoin. Vito, my first thought was an illegal did it. Yeah. Biden is a. Did you see everyone put the robots that Biden walks like the Tesla robots? It's very good. Big Baby G, it is totally free and fair election. Yeah, the best election we've ever had. If you think that the crime is bad now, wait until the economy turns down and resources are scant. Yeah. I wonder if Hunter's tattoo, the abandonment of the laptop, and his sister's abandonment of her journal are all a cry for help with plausible deniability to keep them from being killed. It could be. Really, it could. I mean, I see what you're saying, Big Baby G, but I'm not. Look, if Hunter gets caught up and his life is ruined from all this, I don't really care. Like, I don't care, right? Or it's not, or if he's vindicated, or if it was, it doesn't matter. The fake news that went into the election interference and their inability to cover it up after the fact is one of the biggest smoking guns about how terrible they really are. So we need to keep the frame that we've got, right, about the credibility of this thing, and that we're dealing with evil, the likes of which Balaji just underlined, right? So maybe you're right. Look, when Hunter did his thing that day, when he didn't testify and came out and spoke in front of Congress, I actually felt like I was on his side for a second. I really did. Now it was a feint, it was a scam, but he had a point. I don't want to be a person who's rushing to judgment about all of these people. Hunter's an American citizen and absolutely deserves a fair trial, and he's innocent until proven guilty. My problem is not Hunter, how he got the laptop. It's the lying that went on top of it. Hunter is not really the bad guy here, as far as I can tell, right? I think Hunter might even be allowed to do some of this stuff. He might be a CIA agent. We have to understand that, right? All this money that you see might not really be as shady as it looks. It might not be. Now, I believe Hunter and Joe are crooked, but you've got to leave the 5% chance that it's not the case. There's something else going on. We don't have all the information, but we don't need it. We don't need it, right? What we need to know is how corrupt the media is about it, because nothing could justify what it was that they're doing and what they did to protect those stories. That's how I see it. So I'm not 100% convinced Hunter is the caricature that Republicans make of him. He might be, but there's a missing piece there that I don't know, right? Nothing to do about the authenticity of the thing. The lie was the Russian piece, right? It's another one of these Russian scams. So that's the issue. All right, that's all I got. Robert, he was protesting against the genocide of children. How is that woke? You sound illiterate. Well, it's the Silver 106. I mean, you gotta remember what's going on over there in that war. You're dealing with a war in Israel and Gaza that is just about lying about how many children are dead, and you win when you lose more children. You understand? This is not a normal war. This is a propaganda war. It's not real. So kids are dying. Yeah, I'm not saying they're not. That's not what I'm saying. The game is to lie about how many and to have the most. Think about how sick that is. This is the most fiat war you've ever seen in your life, right? At least the Russian war is like killing people and you win because you killed more people, right? So what's going on in Israel and Palestine, Gaza, is another situation altogether. Lying, both sides, about how many kids you lost. It's sick. It's absolutely sick. So your best, for me, like my advice on it is don't get jacked by who did the most children killing genocide. The game is that. That's the game they're playing. So you'll never be able to take a moral high ground over there if you keep the opinion of one side is genocidal. It's not going to work, right? It's not going to work. So that's how I see it. That's how I see it. That's how I see it. Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff going on over there that's super sketchy. Both sides want the moral high ground. Yeah. The point is to lure Israel into a trap where they can't defend themselves with their old Holocaust story, which is probably all around positive, right? I think, anyway. I think it was a long time ago, and it can't be used to create. It can't be used to short circuit people's thoughts anymore, right? There's more going on here now. From there, I don't know what to say. I've always expressed that as someone who grew up in a very Jewish environment, it doesn't justify it. Yeah, but I can't be. What I'm saying is I can't be objective about what's going on over there, right? So I don't really talk about it much because I can't be objective. I'm not capable of being objective in what's going on over there. I've spent time in Israel. All my kids are born in Jewish hospitals. All my family dies in Jewish hospitals. Like, I'm a Montreal English guy. Guess what half of my friends are, right? And I lived in New York and worked professionally there forever. I got a ton of Muslim friends too. Don't get me wrong. I had a Moroccan roommate in college. There's none of that going on. I go to Middle Eastern places all the time. We love it there, right? So I'm very bullish on the future of Islam. Really, I am. But I don't even pretend that I'm objective about what's going on there. That's what I think. That's what I think. Now, I have no problem with people. I'm not also I don't want any money to go to Israel. I'm not defending what they're doing. It's none of my business now, right? The blood spilled is on the hands of those in power. Yeah. All right, team. Thanks for coming. I appreciate it. Thanks for spending your mornings with me. Thanks for all the fun chats. We love it. And we shall see you all tomorrow, early, 8 a.m. Eastern time, as usual. And we shall do it all again. And we should have more things to laugh at. All right. Peace, everyone.